everyone, and you're welcome to IITA TV podcast series. I remain your loyal host, Tolulope Olabode. On this episode, we'll be looking at how agronomical practices improve nutrition. We'll be looking at how decisions made on the farm improve or impact the food on our table and eventually our nutrition. So join this conversation with me and enjoy it. Post all your questions on all our social media platforms because I have two experts on board who are going to be doing justice to this conversation. And of course, I have Dr. Meyer David on board, who is going to be introducing himself shortly, and I also have Dr. Mercy Lungaho. Please, you're welcome on board, and I'm looking forward to an exciting time with you. Dr. Meyer, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, thank you for having me here this afternoon. I'm very happy to be in this important conversation about nutrition and as it goes to human health. So my background is I'm a plant scientist. I spent 40 years with a multinational company, which ended up being Corteva Agrisciences. And during those 40 years, I spent about 27 years as an applied plant breeder. Then I spent 10 years managing our global molecular marker discovery lab, which also included the analytical chemistry department, quantitative genetics. So basically, all the lab support for the breeders out in the field. Then the last 4 years of my career, I was in the space of regenerative agriculture, trying to help our company understand what regenerative agriculture was and then how it could help serve the farmers that we are working with. During that time, I also spent some time helping out and advising with some projects in sub-Saharan Africa, mostly around cassava, and then some with yams and bananas and sweet potatoes. So I've had the opportunity to be to Tanzania a couple times, as well as other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much. You are a plant scientist. Dr. Mercy, over to you. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience today?
Thank you, Tolu. It's always a pleasure to join you and have important conversations. You know, I'm an advocate of nutrition, so anywhere nutrition is, I'm happy to be part of the conversation. When you call me an expert, I ask myself, am I really an expert? I see myself as just a little girl who's trying to make an impact in Africa. I lead the Food Security, Nutrition and Health Program at IITA. And our mandate is really to transform food systems. You know, long time ago, when agriculture started in Africa, we were talking about growing food. Today, we are talking about nourishing communities. It is my job to translate what growing food and nourishing to communities means and making sure that that mother, that child, they have food on their table, they're living their best life ever. And that's why I love my job. Thank you.
Thank you. I love my job too. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions, and I would like to start with Dr. David Meyer. So, what are those critical agronomical practices farmers should adopt? You know, when it comes to food, we rely solely on what comes from the farm. So, what are those practical things that farmers should adopt today to sustainably boost productivity while preserving soil fertility? So what would you say to that, sir?
Yeah, and first of all, you are absolutely correct. It is critical to have a healthy soil that in turn creates healthy plants, which in turn creates nutritious plants for human consumption. And so I am no expert in sub-Saharan Africa, but fortunately, there are what they're called 6 principles of soil health that are really useful anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you have 10,000 hectares in the US or Argentina or Brazil or a hectare and a half in Tanzania. These principles I'm going to describe have been well proven to help improve soil health. And as I read through these, please keep in mind these are principles, right? So how an individual farmer actually does the practices on their field depends on their particular field. And so the
Okay.
practices are, there are 6 of them. And the first one is simply to minimize soil disturbance. And that means to leave the soil alone as much as possible, do as less tillage as possible, and put down as less herbicide and insecticides as possible. The second principle is simply to keep the soil covered. And there are lots of different ways you can do that. Some people use cover crops, some people leave residue on there. There are different ways to do that. The third principle is incorporate biodiversity as much as possible. Diversity is extremely important in any system that creates healthy soils. The fourth principle is keep living roots in the soil as long as possible. I think the thing people have to remember is that there is a lot of life in healthy soils, and that biological life has to have something to eat, and usually that is living roots. The fifth principle then simply is to integrate livestock within that cropping system as much as possible. As you think about the way plants evolved over time in any countries, it was the interaction between the plants and the animals and the ecosystem. That's the way plants evolved, and it's very important to have healthy soil to recreate that natural evolution. And the sixth principle is probably one of the most important ones, and that is all about the context and mindset of the farmer. So you have to think about these five principles I just described and try and understand how can you incorporate those in your farm? What are your decisions for you to be able to do as many of those as possible? Now, keep in mind, it's not easy to do all six of these at once. Many farmers start with one or two and they work towards trying to incorporate all six of them. As I think about Tanzania, I think about groups like in Rwanda, the Rwanda Institute of Conservation Agriculture, which should be a really good resource for you on how to take these principles and turn them into practices. So I'll stop there, and we'll be talking much more about these principles probably later on. So
All
thank you.
right, thank you very much. So I'm going to be basing my next question to Dr. Messi on your last principle, changing the mindset of the farmers. So I'm going to be asking you, Dr. Messi, from your experience, in what context can farmers adopt practices that ensure food availability and better dietary diversity for households and communities? You know, they have their own mindsets. This is how we do it. This is how it should continue. So how do we change their mindsets to ensure that we have a change in the food that we take?
Good question. Let me start by saying that I really love the six principles that David explained. And the last two were surprising to me, that biodiversity is important and the mindset of the farmer is important. So I pick on biodiversity because there's no way you will have diversity on the plate if it doesn't exist in the field. So that's important. But when you talk about the mindset of the farmer, I have to remind you that farmers are very smart. They're very rational. Many times we think that we're doing things for the farmer when we should really be doing things with the farmer. So for me, what I see is really needed is a food system that supports them. Farmers want to have biodiversity. They want to have healthy soils. They want systems that then promote that, be it seed systems that promote diversity, make fertilizer affordable, make growing other crops other than staple crops. That is what is needed. So when you just remember that a resilient farm should not just feed the market, but should also promote and keep the farmer's family healthy. It's easy for them to make that jump if they can make money out of it. So if we ask farmers to grow diverse crops, then we have to create markets for those diverse crops so that there's an incentive for them to do that. And because that will make sure that the soil is healthy.
Thank you very much. Soil is healthy. So I'm going to be asking Dr. Meyer this question. How can smallholder farmers, especially in Africa, balance traditional farming methods with modern farming agronomical innovations to achieve optimal results?
That is an excellent question, and thank you for that. And you may be a little bit surprised by my answer. So first of all, let me start out by saying there are many facets to the term modern agriculture innovations. unfortunately, I think many times when people hear that term, they think about these large fields with heavy use of insecticide and herbicides that you
Mm,
see sometimes across the US and other countries. And one thing I would urge you to do and think about is please don't try and mimic what we are doing in the US with these large fields with heavy use of insecticide and herbicides.
mm,
We have found out over
mm,
time that there are certainly unintended consequences to a farming system that we've been doing the last 20 to 30 years. We're finding out that we are losing our soils, they're eroding away, they are being degraded, our organic matter is going down. We're having unintended consequences with things like water quality, getting chemicals and nitrates in the water, which affect human health, and also water quality, I'm sorry, quantity. So we have issues with the system. And in fact, there is a large push in the US to start to move away from that system and move into
mm,
what is called regenerative agriculture, which follows the principles that I just described as I in the first question. What we're starting to think about and discover is that modern agronomy is taking a much more systems approach. It's not just
mm,
focused on what can we do one field, one season, but really starting to think about how do we think about the next 5 years on that person's farm? What is she doing on that farm? What is her cropping system? And how do they interact with each other over time? There's also, as the science progresses, there's becoming a larger, more significant appreciation of the understanding of the robust life underneath the soil and how important it is to healthy plants and nutrition. In fact, if you take a handful of healthy soil, there's actually more organisms in that handful of healthy soil than there are humans on Earth. So healthy soil
mm,
is alive with a rich, robust diversity of life. One of the farms that I work on, which is an organic farm, they make the statement that the most important livestock they have on the farm is actually the organisms underneath the soil surface. So basically, modern agriculture is moving towards working more with nature than instead of against nature. Um, and as far as traditional farming goes, it's been my opinion for many years that actually many of the smallholder farmers that I've interacted with in sub-Saharan Africa, including Tanzania, are much further along in this journey of regenerative agriculture than many farmers are in the US because they have the mindset. They know that diversity of crops are important. They're more in tune with their farm. And really, as Mercy mentioned, and as you talked about, the most important thing to overcome is the mindset that diversity is important, soil life is important. So,
mm.
what I'd like you to think about and urge you to do as you think about your traditional values, you know, think about the good things that you have and then add what's appropriate from advanced agronomy. So, think about things like how can you include more improved varieties in your fields because genetic potential sets the upper limit to food productivity as well as nutrition. You know, think about things like making sure your varieties have the proper plant spacing. Follow what I call
Mm,
the 3 R's, and that is the 3 R's in nutrition basically is putting down the right fertilizer at the right product at the right time at the right amount.
right time.
So
mm,
don't overdo things, just do things at the right value. And also you can really start to use, again, modern agronomy includes all these digital predictive tools. And so it's easy to start to use those predictive tools to help you understand when is the right time to plant your particular crop. And again, it's thinking over seasons and not just one season at a time. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you very much. Your last statement will take me to my next question for Dr. Mercy. But before I ask her, we're going to be going on a very short break. Please sit back and enjoy. You're welcome back, and it is still IITA TV podcast series. I remain your host, Tolulokbe Olabode. So, Dr. Meyer, from your comments, you mentioned regenerative agriculture. Can you explain that for us layman?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm smiling because that term has caused much confusion everywhere. And the issue is there is no one accepted definition of regenerative agriculture. There are many different definitions out there. But basically, the easiest one, the most straightforward one, actually came from a farmer. And that definition simply is working with nature instead of against nature. What much of the U.S. agriculture has been doing, they have been trying to feed the plant and keep nature away, right? They had the idea that nature's bad, it's full of insects, it's full of diseases, all these bad things. And so that's very different than saying we are going to feed the soil is going to become healthy, then it will feed the plant. So there is no textbook definition, but it's basically working with nature. And by thinking of the word regenerate, it's different than sustainable agriculture because sustainable agriculture means you are going to sustain the biological system that's in place. Regenerative agriculture, on the other hand, means you are going to take that biological system in place and you are going to regenerate it back to its optimal potential. So that's the difference between those two terms.
Thank you very much for this explanation. I've learned. I'm learning. And thank you very much. So I'm going to be taking this to Dr. Mercy. From your experience, how do good agronomical practices directly improve the nutritional quality of crops, beyond just increasing yield? Because I know farmers are always after increasing their yields, and then they can somehow overlook the importance of the nutrition, the quality of the nutrition that we of the food that we consume. So how do we need to promote good agronomical practices to ensure this?
Thank you, Tolu. I hope you recognize how important that question is. In fact, I give you an A plus for just asking such a beautiful question. I love something
Thank you.
that David said, and I want to emphasize. We need to work with nature. What is our nature? Humans don't need calories alone. We need nutrients. We need iron. We need zinc. We need vitamin A. We know about biofortified cassava that has more vitamin A, or maize that looks orange because it has more vitamin A. Where does that plant get that nutrient to put in the grain? It's not magic. It gets it from the soil. So in my lab, when we analyze the quality of biofortified crops and other crops that we grow at IIT, we are asking how well did they take care of the soil to be able to ensure that on the plate we have the nutrients we need to live a healthy life. So breeding, like Dr. Meyer said, can give us the nutrient potential. It can allow the maize to pull more iron or more zinc or more vitamin A from the soil. But agronomy is what will make that possible in the farmer's field. If the soil has nothing to give, the plant will have nothing to give us back. That's why in my culture, we say the plate always thanks the soil. And it's something I think we should begin to do more often. So thank you for asking such an important question, because what we are saying is yield tells us how much food we have. Nutrient density, how much nutrients are in the crop, tells us how much we can nourish our communities. And that's where we want to have the focus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You've spoken like a true nutritionist. So I would like to hear from Dr. Meyer too, from science side. What do you think needs to be done? As in, how important is this?
Yeah, and thank you for that. And before I dive into the science, I think Dr. Mercy, what you described, it really says it all, right? And I wish that you could come to the US and talk to many of the farmers here. This idea that the healthy plate starts with healthy soil is exactly the message that people need to relearn, right? They've kind of forgotten that. Um, but as we dive into the science, it is a fascinating science story to really start to understand how nutritional plants starts with the healthy soil. And again, if you start to follow those 6 principles of soil health, regenerative ag that I started the session with, your soil starts to become more healthy, then that soil starts to work for the plants and work for you. And again, it's a fascinating science story how plants and soil biology have evolved together. As you think about what goes on underneath the soil, what scientists are finding out is that many plants leak out about 30% of the sugars that they spent the time photosynthesizing and developing. And so one would ask the question, why in the world would the plants take these coveted sugars that they worked so hard to create and just let them leak out through their roots, right? Why would they do that? And the answer is simply is that that feeds a biological life around the roots of those plants. So what happens is this symbiotic relationship, the plant excretes the sugars out of the roots, and then things like bacteria eat the sugars, and then the bacteria give things back to the plant. Some bacteria help produce nitrogen that the plants need. Some of the bacteria help with insect pressures, disease pressures. And then there's this thing that is just amazing called mycorrhizal fungi, which basically attaches itself to the roots of the plant, digests those sugars, and then that fungi moves throughout the soil and, by a factor of 10 expands the amount of space the roots can mine for nutrients. And this fungi actually goes and dissolves rock and gets minerals out of the rock and takes those minerals back to the plant that helps make the plant healthy and more nutritious. So there's this amazing underground economy of symbiosis working together. And again, none of that happens if your soil is not healthy. As Dr. Mercy said, if your soil is not healthy, your plants have a limited amount of space they can mine for the micronutrients they have. But if it works with this underground economy of biological life, it has a lot more area to get these nutritional micronutrients into the plant. And so these micronutrients help with plant uh, nutrition, of course, but it also helps with just general water holding capacity and things like that. And so as you build up the soil, you help with nutriency, you help with water management. And so one thing I'd like to leave you with as we put the science aside, right? It is at the end of the day, there is only one health system on the planet. And so as we think about health, right, there is really no way you can discriminate between the health of the soil to the health of the plant, to the health of the animals, to the health of the ecosystem around it, to the human health, to the community health, and to the planet health. We're all part of one health system. And the more we understand that, the more we respect the different parts of the system. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with is this idea that probably, again, I think many people in Tanzania understand more than some people do in the US. This indigenous philosophy of the seventh generation principle, which means as you think about your farm, as you think about what you're doing on the farm, you of course have to provide for your family that season, but you also have to think about the things you're doing on your farm. How does that affect somebody 7 generations down the line? Are you going to lead them a more healthy farm? Are you going to lead them a more degraded farm? So it's all about thinking long term.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. That's a very good way of summarizing why we are talking about this. Nutrition is very important, not just for us now, but for the coming generation. So whatever we do now, whatever we do on the farm now, would impact the coming generation. And I would really like to say thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Thank you, Dr. Mercy, for being here. It's been a very good and educative session with you, and I hope very soon we'll call you back and you'll be available to shed more light to these conversations on nutrition, on food security, on good agronomical practices. Thank you very much. And this is where I would like to draw the curtain for today's episode, because this is a continue to sensitize people about why we have to take food and our nutrition serious. Thank you very much, and I would like you to know that I would be coming back to you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I would like to say to my viewers that you should stay tuned for our next episode. Like us, join us on all our social media platforms. Thank you very much. This is Tolu Olabode saying bye-bye to you.